Have you ever had a moment where something told you to walk away? Something you could not explain. Something that made no logical sense, but you listened to it anyway. And later, much later, you found out that if you had not listened, you would not be here to talk about it. Daniel had that moment. Except his came from the most impossible place imaginable. His own phone. Now let me take you back to where it all started. It was a Wednesday evening in October 2019, Portland, Oregon, the kind of cold gray evening where the sky sits low and heavy and the streets are wet before the rain even starts. Daniel was 34 years old, an accountant, quiet life, quiet apartment, the kind of man whose neighbors would later struggle to describe him to journalists because there was simply nothing remarkable to report. He was driving home from work on the same route he had driven every single day for 3 years. Left on Morrison, right on Burnside, straight down the 84 until his exit. He knew every pothole, every timing of every traffic light, every spot where the radio signal dropped out under the overpass. It was the most ordinary moment of the most ordinary day of what had been up until that point a perfectly ordinary life. His phone rang at 6:47 p.m. He glanced at the screen on the dashboard mount. And everything stopped. His own name. His own number. Calling him. Now I need you to understand something before we go any further, because I know what you were thinking. You were thinking it was a glitch, a network error, a spam call spoofing his number, something technical and explainable. Daniel thought the same thing. For approximately 4 seconds. Then he picked up. The voice on the other end was calm, male, speaking quietly and deliberately as if every word had been chosen in advance. It said, "Daniel, you need to go home a different way tonight." Daniel felt his stomach drop. He said, "Who is this?" The voice said, "You know who this is, go home a different way, do not take the 84. Then it hung up. Daniel sat at that red light for what felt like a very long time. The car behind him honked. He pulled forward. And then he did something he would spend the next 3 years trying to explain. He turned left instead of right. He went home a different way. He took surface streets through southeast Portland, added 20 minutes to his commute, sat in traffic he never usually saw. He got home at 7:23 p.m. instead of 7:03 p.m. He poured a glass of water and stood at his kitchen window and tried to talk himself out of what had just happened. Then his phone buzzed. A news alert. Major accident on Interstate 84 eastbound, multiple vehicles, fatalities reported, road closed indefinitely. The accident had occurred at 6:58 p.m. Daniel would have been at that exact stretch of highway at that exact time. He sat down on his kitchen floor and did not move for 40 minutes. The investigation into the call began almost immediately, not by police. Daniel did not call the police that night, he did not know what he would have said. He called his phone carrier first. Their technical team investigated for 6 days. Their conclusion was delivered in a single sentence that Daniel has never forgotten. There is no record of an outgoing call from your number at 6:47 p.m. on October 9, 2019. Not a dropped call, not a failed connection, not a glitch. No record. As far as every phone network involved was concerned, that call did not happen. But Daniel had answered it, he had heard a voice, he had changed his route, and 7 people had died on the road he did not take. He began researching obsessively. He found cases of what telecommunications experts call phantom calls, calls that registers on the receiving end but leave no trace on any network log. They are extraordinarily rare, documented fewer than 40 times in the entire history of telecommunications research. In every documented case, the call came from a number with a personal connection to the recipient. A parent, a sibling, a spouse. In 3 of the documented cases, the number belonged to someone who was already dead at the time the call was received. Daniel's number had not called anyone. Daniel's number had called itself. He spent months trying to find a rational framework for what had happened. He spoke to physicists, he spoke to telecommunications engineers, he spoke to a professor of parapsychology at a university in Edinburgh who had spent 30 years studying exactly these kinds of cases. The professor told him something that Daniel said changed the entire way he thought about the experience. She said, "The question you keep asking is how did this happen? But I think the more interesting question is why did it happen to you specifically? Why that night? Why that road? What is it about your life at that moment that made you the person who needed to receive that call?" Daniel did not have an answer. Not until 6 months later. He was going through boxes in his apartment, the kind of clearing out you do when you have been sitting with something heavy for too long and you need to move things around to feel like you are moving forward. In one of the boxes he found a phone. His old phone, the one he had used before upgrading 2 years earlier. He turned it on out of habit. There were 17 unlistened voicemails. He went through them one by one, mostly nothing, spam, a couple from friends he had fallen out of touch with. And then the 16th. Left by his father. 2 days before his father died of a sudden heart attack 4 years earlier. Daniel had never been able to listen to it. He had transferred the phone number, upgraded the handset, carried that unlistened voicemail through 2 years of a new life without ever being able to press play. He pressed play. His father's voice filled the room. And what his father said in that voicemail, recorded 4 years before the accident, recorded 4 years before Daniel drove home a different way and survived, was this: "Whatever road you are on, son, sometimes the right thing to do is just take a different one. Trust that feeling. I always did. It never let me down." Daniel has listened to that voicemail 412 times. He knows because he counted. He has never found a rational explanation for the call he received on October 9, 2019. He has never needed one. Because here is what Daniel told the one journalist he ever agreed to speak to about what happened. He said, "I spent a long time trying to prove it was impossible, and then one day I realized I was spending all my energy trying to disprove something that saved my life. And I thought, what kind of sense does that make? I have thought about that question every single day since I first heard this story. Because the truth is that all of us have had moments where something told us to turn left when we meant to turn right, to call someone we had not spoken to in years, to stop, to wait, to not get on that train. And most of us dismiss it. Most of us override it. Most of us take the 84. Drop a comment below right now. Have you ever had a moment you cannot explain, a feeling that told you to do something that made no sense, and you listened, and something happened? I want to hear every single one. If this story gave you chills, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you are new here, hit that subscribe button because every story on this channel is going to make you feel something real. In the next video, a family moved into their dream home and found a locked room that was not on any floor plan. What was inside that room had been there for over 100 years, and what it revealed about the previous owners destroyed everything the new family thought they knew about the house they were living in. Make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss it.